Okay, that's just in case it's... Okay, perfect. Okay. Are you feeling all right?
Yeah, all good.
Let's get this started.
All right.
All right. Hey, guys. Welcome to another episode of the EJB Talk Show. I'm Amiel. And today I have a very special guest, one of the newest cellists at UFT Music this year. First year, Tomas Peña. Am I saying that right? Actually, I didn't.
Peña. That's right.
Yeah, no worries. But you know what?
Mm.
I'm happy we're doing this. So Tomas is a cellist at UFT here, first year in performance.
Yeah.
And yeah, I met Tomas earlier this year. You were subbing for a rehearsal for a musical.
I was, yeah.
Yeah, for Carrie. And
one that you were performing in, right?
Yeah. And now you're doing Into the Woods.
Right.
So, right from the gate, how is that going so far?
That is actually, well, first of all, thanks for having me.
Of
this
course.
is really exciting. It's my first talk show. That's going great. Actually, I feel like U of T has been filled with many firsts for me.
Okay.
And some of those have been musical theater, kind of as you mentioned. So
right.
I subbed for Carrie once, that you were performing in.
Rehearsal, right.
And then now I'm doing Into the Woods with Jonah that you know very well, right? So it's been really fun. I've never really done a musical before, a production before.
Have you done opera before?
I haven't done opera either. No.
Right. So first time in a pit, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in a show, essentially, accompanying something, right?
Right.
So yeah, it's very interesting. It's very different to what I'm used to.
How so?
Well, the notation itself is pretty similar, but then there's things how they have vamps or safeties, which is essentially when the conductor holds up his hand and you have to keep repeating a bar or two until he tells you to stop repeating, which is something that I hadn't seen before.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently it's very common in
musicals
and things like that, to give the actors time to speak or sing or whatever they're doing. Yeah. So yeah, it's been a really cool experience overall. It's been fun trying new things like that.
Yeah, that's great, man.
Yeah.
And usually my first question, I skipped it over because I was very excited to ask that.
Oh yeah, no worries.
But my first question usually is, what did you get up to today?
Oh, today has been a pretty long day.
Really?
I think Mondays are usually my longest day.
Yeah, 'cause I don't really know the first year schedule for second semester because mine is nothing actually.
Right. Yeah. Right. Oh wow. I had history lecture at 9 a.m. So I had to wake up early for that.
Right.
And then we had theory. We had orchestra rehearsal for the past 2 hours. And then right after this, I'm going to have a studio class with my teacher, Joseph Johnson. He's my professor at U of T.
Right.
And that goes till 9 or 10, depending on the day.
It varies.
Yeah,
you don't really cap it like that.
Yeah, it's depends on also his schedule or whoever is subbing. Today, it's gonna be his TA subbing for him because he's somewhere, at a festival. But yeah, it's usually starts at 7 or 8, ends about 9 or 10, and we get to see our peers perform pieces they're working on. It's a great opportunity to perform.
Right.
Yeah.
How often have you performed in studio class?
In studio,
this year so far.
I have. So in Joe's studio class, I've performed maybe twice or 3 times.
Okay.
I've performed more in performance class, cello master class, which is all the cellists, not just Joe's studio. Yeah.
Right. So I want to ask you. I ask this in everyone. What is your earliest musical memory that you could recall? First time music kind of reached out to you and it kind of stuck with you up here.
I think my earliest musical memory was hearing. So I'm from Ecuador. I was born in Ecuador.
I'm going to ask a bunch of questions about that. I'm very excited
Sounds good.
That,
so I was born in Ecuador, and I went to a school over there called Colegio Menor.
Okay.
And they have a really big arts program. And so in grade 4, they get students to pick their own instrument and start learning the instrument, right? So they have this big fair where you get to see the teachers perform on their instrument. And and I think that's the first time I've ever really seen like a big variety of instruments
Like
performed,
music.
like
Right.
or music performed in a very cool way by professionals, really.
Right.
Then the teachers also like collaborate sometimes. I saw teachers perform in like ensembles or like marching bands in school. And then there's like string quartets, things like that. So I think my earliest musical memory is it's kind of like pretty scattered all over the place because you know, I heard lots of music around grade 4. But I think it took place at school. It took place in elementary school.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then from that like kind of fair was like cello immediately like piqued your interest?
Yeah. I always really liked the cello, even before I saw like one in person. I thought it was such a cool instrument, and that was just like the perfect opportunity to start learning it.
So it was your first instrument?
Actually, no, it was my second instrument. I started learning the piano when I was about 5 or 6.
And were you just kind of forced to do it?
I was kind of interested. I always kind of like I always would like lean towards music a lot, and I thought playing the piano would be cool, but you know, I was never really into learning the piano that much.
Did you feel
I
like
liked
it? It was like something like a chore. It became a chore to do, like a task.
At times it did.
Right.
I feel, especially I had many piano teachers. Some were more like motivating than others. And as a small kid, you know, that really it's important. In, like your motivation, right? So I think, you know, piano, I never really thought I would become a musician with piano. It was just kind of like something I did. And I was interested, and then I started doing it. It started like becoming part of my schedule. But when I started learning cello, that's when I really I felt like more of a connection with the instrument, if that makes sense. Right. So it's, I don't know. That's where it kind of started. Right. Yeah. With
do you have a musical family, you'd say?
Not really. No, I think I'm the only person in my close family who really plays an instrument.
How about, are they like very enthusiastic about music, your family? Or?
They are, they very different kinds of music. Okay. My dad's really into like rock music or 80s music, and then my mom is like very into Latin American music. Right. And then, you know, just a mixture of stuff. It's really fun to listen to like different things. There's always music in the house. Yeah.
But you're saying like you're essentially kind of the first step in of like classical orchestral music interest in your family, essentially. Yeah,
for sure. Because you know, after you know, I started the cello, I started to get more into orchestral and like classical music, and I kind of brought that more like in my home. Right. Yeah.
So like that kind of brings a question that I've always been very curious about, which I was like kind of most excited to do this because I do want to know what kind of place classical music holds in certain non-Northwestern countries, right? So what kind of, because you spent a lot of time in Ecuador, you moved when you were like in high school?
I moved when I was when I finished grade 7.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So
you, right. Okay, let me rephrase that. But I do want to say, like, where does classical music as a whole hold? Okay, let me try it again.
That's okay, no worries.
What kind of place does classical music hold in Ecuador?
Ecuador, I feel that it's not as, it doesn't have too much of a presence. Like, I mean, like when you compare it to Canada, you have Roy Thompson Hall, which is you have the TSO, you have quartets all over the place, like really well-known classical musicians. Right. I think over there's still kind of a barrier between classical music and people, because I don't know, they have a symphony. They have
like a national symphony.
Yeah, a national symphony. It's a good symphony. They have musicians, but it's not like, you know, like here when I was in high school here, they took me like very frequently to the TSO to
like
just
as
watch
a high school trip.
As a high school trip. to just watch the TSO, and that's something that it didn't really happen in Ecuador.
Right.
Like here, I feel like there's less of a barrier between classical music and people. So, but it's there in Ecuador. I just feel like it's not. We should like break that barrier a little more.
Because I do find that, like, say in Canada or America, if you're not a musician remotely, sometimes you just like you're interested in classical music and going to the symphony. But do you kind of find that in Ecuador that, like, if you're not a musician, if you're not a classical musician, then you very low chance that you'd be interested in that?
Yeah. If you're not really exposed to it, then I think it's a very low chance.
Right.
Yeah, you either have to kind of know an instrument or have been in some like lessons, or maybe you have to be part of a family that does like listen to classical music or knows about classical music. So
since you were like studying the cello back there, and given that circumstance that we've just talked about, how has like have you been able to like feed your cello progress there? Like, is it a very supportive educational ethos, or was it something you kind of had to just keep working on your own with a private teacher, and in schools it wasn't that talked about?
It was. I feel like the mentalities were very different.
Okay.
When I came to Canada, I wanted to really get better at the instrument, whereas in Ecuador, I think it was more like they wanted to kind of teach you how, like, the basics. Right. And then like it was mostly like geared towards playing in an ensemble or playing together and like having fun, playing like music
decently casual.
Yeah, pretty casual. It's not like they taught you specifically. It was a group class.
Kind of treated like a hobby.
Yeah, like a hobby. They would mark you, but it's like nobody really did it very seriously. It's more of like having fun, and the basics, and then you can just play whatever, right? But when I moved to Canada like 4 years ago, I really started to like I like to think that that's when I actually like started learning the cello
and really taking
it seriously. Wow. And learning technique and all of that stuff. So
what did you do to like make sure that would happen? Did you like already look for teachers when you got here?
The first thing I did was go to the Sound Post. I don't know if you've heard of the Sound Post.
Yeah.
It's
I'm not a string player, but I do like I hear of it a bunch. But
it's like I don't know. It's like every string player knows the Sound Post in Toronto. So we looked into the Sound Post, and then we went there to get my first cello here in Canada. Like after the first few weeks of like arriving, really. And then what I did was I asked them for suggestions for teachers around my area.
Wait, so did you not own a cello?
No, I didn't.
Was it like borrowing from the school?
It was the school's cello, yeah.
Okay.
So I sometimes I took it home, sometimes I left it at school. I didn't really practice. It was just like go there and play. And so I had my first cello. I started like actually practicing. I started my lessons with this teacher that the Sound Post recommended, and she was really I think she was really the person who really changed my perspective in music. Yeah, because before I wanted to learn the cello, but after I started lessons with her, I wanted to become a cellist. You know?
Okay.
Yeah.
And when how far into teaching with that how far into learning with that teacher did that kind of happen? Like immediately, or did it take a little bit, you say?
I think it took a little bit. It was also like a lot of it was when she would play, I would be like, oh, I've never heard. Like my teacher back in Ecuador wouldn't play for us, but sometimes like my teacher here would play for me, and she would play like something that looked really cool, and I was like, oh wow, like you can see cello playing in like on YouTube, but if you see it in person, it's like a completely
really
something else. So I think after seeing how like difficult or like how complex the pieces she was playing were, then I think that's what like really started to get me interested in learning, like getting really good at it. Right.
So when was the point in like being in Canada when you already knew like I want to go to university for music?
I think maybe towards grade 10.
Okay.
Because we had, I don't know if you had this, we had a careers class in high school.
Yeah.
And I think it took like a year of like playing with my teacher and, you know, getting really into the instrument.
Mm-hmm.
And then like when I got to careers class and they were like, oh, what would you like to become? What do you want to study?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I would really like to study music. At first I thought like I would want to become a high school music teacher.
Okay. And was that because your music teachers were really good?
Yeah, like I wanted to teach music. I wanted to like, I don't know, I wanted to be able to do what my teachers had done.
Mm-hmm.
But then I slowly, you know, the more I advance, the more like I practice, the more that I feel
love performing.
I love performing. Yeah.
Right. So then you applied for performance here, and you're here now. So how have you enjoyed being here at U of T so far?
I have enjoyed it very much. I've met some of the coolest people I've ever met in Canada, really.
Right.
Or like the entire world. I didn't think I would meet like so many cool people, like amazing friends.
That's very sweet.
Yeah, and it's, I don't know, I think it's mainly the people that have made this experience like really magical. Yeah.
Right. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's actually great to hear. I love hearing when people like get into this school and they're just like they love the community. That's what everyone always says when I do these interviews. That's people who are kind of new here. They're like, the community is great. Right. That's awesome. But I'm going to start wrapping this one up. Okay. You've been great, but I do want to ask you, what are some personal musical goals you have for yourself for until the end of the year, you'd say?
Oh, until the end of the year. Until the end of the year. I think I really want to start learning more repertoire.
Okay.
I've covered some really cool repertoire with my teacher so far. And, you know, he always gets me excited about starting, like, newer, more, like, I don't know how to say, like, really interesting pieces.
Right.
So I think I'm just really excited to keep exploring the cello repertoire.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you've been a great guest today. Everyone, Tomas Peña. Check him out below. I'm going to link his Instagram. And this has been another great episode of the EJB Talk Show. See you guys in the next one. Peace.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.